Okay, everybody, welcome. I see people all trickling in. While we're waiting for everybody to get into the room, I'll just go over the basics here. First of all, this session is on helping adult English language learners develop digital literacy and resilience. And these are strategies specifically for teachers. That is the session we are in. My name is Glenda Rose. I am the Adult Education Director for Community Action, Inc. of Central Texas. We are the state-funded provider for the 9 rural counties that surround Austin, Texas, so the rural capital area, which is about 7,500 square miles, and we serve about 3,000 students a year. And I have been in adult education since 1987, and I have been using digital skills in my classrooms since about 1990. This class that you see on the screen, this is one of our Community Action Inc. ESL classes that is blessed enough to be in a computer lab. And we know that a lot of times we don't have a lot of computer access for our ESL classes. This one happens to be in a lab. And the teacher sent me this picture, and I was so proud of her because I had just started really pushing my ESL teachers to start including digital literacy. And I could just see how engaged all of the students were there. So that's a little bit about me, so that you know I am very passionate about distance learning and digital literacy. I'm on a couple of state initiatives and national initiatives trying to help people really get this to, especially our English language learners. So why are we having this conversation about digital skills, digital literacy, the digital divide? For our English language learners, we are at a point in our society that our English language learners, our adult learners that are coming over to participate in our society really can't fully participate if they don't have some digital literacy skills. If you have tried to buy gas, like I did last night, there were at least 5 questions on the pump that I had to answer. There were codes that I had to punch into the machine. I had to know how to use my tap card on the machine. So there were all kinds of digital skills involved in just that simple act of buying gas for my car. So when we don't include digital skills, especially for our newcomers, our learners may be limited about what they can and can't do. Now, that's not always true. I understand that some of our adult immigrant students have, PhDs in computer technologies, but not all of them do, or they can't use the English, even if they know the computer side of it. So we're going to talk about how to bridge this digital divide, separating our adult English language learners in our society so that they can be more full participants. I will have one eye on the chat, but I don't really know if you're going to be using Q&A in chat. So if you put something in Q&A, I will probably address it at the end. Anything that we are discussing on the slide right now that you need to participate right now, you can put it into chat for me. That would be great. So my goals for today is we're just going to define digital literacy and discuss some of the challenges of integrating digital literacy in our classrooms, especially for our English language learners. We'll look at some solutions for those common challenges. I'm going to show you the DART curriculum. It started out as a project for Tyson, so it was digital access and resilience at Tyson, and then Texas took it, so now it's digital access and resilience in Texas. It is a very low beginning ESL curriculum for integrating digital literacy. So I'm going to show you where that is. It's completely free, and you can use it and abuse it any way you would like. We'll also talk about the definition of digital resilience and how to include opportunities for our English language learners to develop digital resilience in our classrooms. So the first thing we're going to do is a waterfall chat check. So a waterfall chat check, I'm just going to have you type your answer, and then when I say the word waterfall, you can go ahead and hit enter. So do not hit enter until I say the word waterfall. The question is, what does the term digital literacy mean to you? So go ahead and take a second, type out your answer. Don't hit enter yet. And don't worry about a correct definition. Don't look it up on Google. This is a thinking exercise, not a right-wrong exercise. Now see, Cheryl, you jumped the gun. I didn't say it, but I'll say it now just to keep you safe. Waterfall. There we go. So this is an online teaching technique. What we found is if we just have people put things in the chat, only the first couple of people make responses in our classrooms. So having a waterfall keyword gives everybody the opportunity to respond. So I'm going to look at a couple of these. Let's see what we have here. We have able to use everyday digital platforms, able to fully understand everything digital. Woo! Okay, being able to navigate a computer properly, how to use technology, being able to navigate the digital world for job search, and there's a comma there, so I'm sure there's more after that. Navigate technology, computer skills, access, connect to the world using devices and the internet, digital skills and resilience. Put that resilience in there. All about digital, empowering learners, understanding tech. Okay, those are all pretty much on the right track. I'm liking it. Okay, so this is one type, if you were doing this in a physical classroom, basically it's a shout out. That's our old school way of doing it. Meet your personal needs in the digital world. All right. So the second example, this is a whiteboard chat, and we can't actually do this one, I just found out, because we don't have the annotate capability. So we're going to just do the same thing for digital resilience. But what I want you to think about, we looked at digital literacy and digital resilience. So instead of asking you, what does the term digital resilience mean to you? I'm going to ask you, what is the difference between digital literacy and digital resilience? Where are they different? Give you a second to think about that. And this time you can just post as you're finished. Katie said, resilience is ready for the next thing while literacy is stagnant. Lucy, resilience is the ability to upskill your literacy. Denise says, problem solving when you have new technologies, ability to pivot. From Nancy. Kathy, adapt to changing digital environments, and they are always changing. How to keep up with the new stuff. Like that, Wendy, just keep up with the new stuff. Confidence, thank you, Emma. Confidence is a big piece of it. Just being able to keep up. Those are all great. I hope you guys get a chance to scroll through those and read those suggestions. And we're going to look at an official definition later, but those were the first two we want to do. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to open a poll everywhere. Poll everywhere is something I use with my ESL students because they can respond to most of my polls through a text message that always goes to the same phone number. So when I have a poll active, and it's not active yet if you're trying to jump ahead, so give me a second. But what you're going to do is if you're using a cell phone, you're going to text to the phone number 22333 my code, which is Dr. Glenda Rose 536. Alternatively, you can go to pollev.com/Dr. Glenda Rose 536. For ESL, I strongly recommend using a QR code because my experience is that very few of my students can actually copy a URL off the board correctly. So QR codes are some of the first things that we learn how to do so I can get them to the right websites when I need to. So let me start that poll for you. I'm going to come over here. The first one is just a test poll. I'm just going to see if we're good to go with the poll itself. So do you teach online or in person? And I'll put that link in the chat box as well while you're doing that, just in case you've forgotten already. And my students really like this poll everywhere option of being able to see the class responses. Oh, a lot of us are doing both nowadays. You don't see the link. I didn't put the HTTPS in the front of it. So, it only went to the host and panelists. Thank you, Dawn. Let's try this again. I'll send this to everyone. And I'll try to type it right this way. pollev.com/Dr. Glenda Rose 536. Got it, Dawn? Yay, thank you. So Poll Everywhere, and I don't get any kickback from them or anything. There's also Mentimeter, there's Poll Daddy, there's a lot of other options out there. I've used Poll Everywhere mainly because once I set it up at the beginning of the year, it's the same thing all year. It's always phone number 22333, and then whatever type of response I ask them to give. So it looks like about half of us are both teaching online and in person. And we have a quarter of us that are support or administrators, and then 12%, 10%, somewhere in there online, and about 20%, 18-20% in person. That sounds about right. So I'm going to try and give you options for both. That's why I did the Waterfall Chat. And there are ways to adapt a lot of these to online. It is hard to teach the very low beginning ESL digital literacy online because they have to have some skills to be able to get online to get into your classroom. So I typically recommend the first 10 lessons in the DART, which we'll look at in a little bit, to be done in person to build those skills up before we do online classes with those particular students. Okay, so now on my side, I'm going to give you another poll here. And on my side, what I do on the Poll Everywhere side is I just click the next button and click present. That'll activate the poll for you guys. So you can still use the same phone number. You go back and refresh for the same link. And 22333 is the phone number. It's up there at the top. And then you just type in ABCDE and then hit send. So while I'm going through the presentation today, you'll notice that I'm using some tools. What I'm doing right now is a tech routine. So I have taught my students Poll Everywhere, and I use it over and over in my class. Then it becomes something that's part of the routine of the class. It is part of answering polls in general so that they can transfer that knowledge to other kinds of polls. So as we're going through the presentation, you might notice how I'm using the technology as if you were English language learners, but just on the advanced end. Okay, we have a couple of very insecure people, a little unsure. This group, because you probably self-selected this session, is pretty confident or very confident. 62%, 63% are very confident or pretty confident. And that's always interesting to me because that's generally what I find when I do this presentation. So what I hope we do is you will take it back to the ones that are less confident because this is designed for them. This is really how to get started. Oh, Laura makes the point they're experiencing reading bar graphs and informatic literacy too. That's an excellent point. Yeah, I want to get them into that graphic literacy as well as English literacy. So that's a very good point. And they really enjoy seeing the responses. There's all kinds of polls here. I do the Poll Everywhere. Dawn is asking what is the best way for in-class to connect. I do Poll Everywhere. I started it long before we had online classes. It was in class. And what I found, and one of the reasons I used it, was that it allowed my more reticent students who were not yet ready to speak in front of the group to give their ideas, thoughts, and answers as well. When using the text option, is it possible for the questions? I don't know that they've ever added that, Nicole, but I am going to write that question down and look into it. And I hadn't thought about it. I always show it. Yeah, except it's not competitive. Rachel says it's kind of like Kahoot, which it is, but it's not competitive. It's just collaborative. Let me show you the next one here. So this is going to be an open-ended answer. The question is, what components do you think are essential for developing digital literacy? What do students need to know to be effective in the digital world? So again, you can use the text option or the QR code, or you can use the website option. So let me start that poll for you. Don't do anything just yet, because remember, I have to come over here and activate it. And now you can send your answers. Again, you can text it to 22333 in complete sentences or phrases if you would like, or you can use the link. If you need me to put the link back in the website, I can do that. or you can just refresh. Not afraid to make mistakes. Ooh, I'm going to star that one because I think that one's really good. I think that's one of the hardest things for us to do is not to be afraid of making mistakes. Creating an account, username and password. That's where the DART curriculum actually started. We were having problems with people logging into devices. Manual dexterity, access, patience. Yeah, I like that one too. Lots of repetition. I think that's important, and especially on different kinds of devices. Patricia wrote in the chat, understanding login between sign in. Okay. Learning the positions of keys on a computer, teacher comfort with technology, practice, practice, practice. There's patience again. Patience. Is that patience for the teacher or the student or both? I bet it's both. Digital resilience, password safety. You know, it's interesting. This year in Texas, they asked us to do a digital literacy survey with our students, and I created one and I executed it. I was just looking at the early data on it, and the weakest area for my students is digital security. Blooket. We gotta like Blooket. Yes. Access to digital skills. Being adventurous. How to use those user interfaces in various forms. When they change on you, after you finally get used to it, they move everything around. Basic typing, clicking, navigation. Dealing with passwords. Anybody forget their password sometime in the last week? Did you know what to do if you forgot your password? I still have, I have some teachers who will actually tell me that somebody changed their password. Nobody changed your password. You either forgot it or you have your cap locks on, but I didn't do it. So passwords are always something that we have to deal with. Adaptability, regularly reviewing and practicing, knowing the basics to start, repetition. That access is a big deal. So like I said, I have 9 rural counties. It's about 7,500 square miles of rural Texas. Now there's some bigger cities like San Marcos and Round Rock in there, but most of them are very rural. And so access has always been a struggle with us because it's not even a socioeconomic issue. If you live that far out in the country, you may not have a signal unless you drive to the end of the cow field. Sight word confidence, understanding what you're reading. So like I said at the gas station last night, it wasn't just the digital skills. I had to be able to read and interpret the English that was on the gas pump. Getting out of your comfort zone. Those are all very good. Okay, I'm going to go back to our slideshow just because we are on a short time today. I'm going to give you the official definition for digital literacy, and this is the ability to use the information and communication technology, so ICT, and there's 5 things. And if you were in a group with me, I would say repeat after me. Find, evaluate, organize, create, and communicate information. And it requires both cognitive and technical skills. Find, evaluate, organize, create, and communicate information. Those are the things somebody who is digitally literate can do using information technologies. But what's interesting to us for ESL teachers is note this at the very bottom where it says cognitive and technical skills. So even if you have 0 technology available to you in your classroom, you can still teach some of the cognitive skills that are required for digital literacy. You can still teach some of the vocabulary, the way that we talk about how we interact in the digital world in your classroom, long before you ever pull out a device. In my classroom, typically you're going to pull out your device around week or class day 10. It's not going to be at the beginning. So we don't have to have a full range of tablets for everybody or computers for everybody to be able to start integrating digital literacy into our English language classrooms. That is the big takeaway I would like for you to have today. I can start where I am and start helping my students be more digitally literate, even if I don't have the technology available right here in this classroom. Now, if I were in a regular webinar, where a Zoom where you could actually stamp, I would have you annotate here for you online teachers. I would use the annotation tool and have you actually put a heart stamp somewhere on this line to indicate where you think your class is, like that. I just did my annotation. But since I don't believe you as webinar participants can do that, what I'm going to ask you to do is just put it in the chat from 0% to 100%, how digitally rich or poor you think your classrooms are, whether it's your personal classroom or your organization's classrooms are for your ESL learners. So I have 50%, I have 70%, 75%, 30%, 50, 60, 20, 30, 75, 30, 65, somewhere in there, 80, somebody's a little higher, back to 50, 10%, we're gonna go all the way down here, 70, 80, and this is something I think as a field of adult educators to English language learners that we need to work on. Because the disparity makes it a little bit unfair to everybody. Okay. Somebody's got 90%. You rock right there. Okay, very nice. Thank you for participating. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and clear my annotations and go back here. I have my mouse back. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Last one that we're going to do on Poll Everywhere is a word cloud. And I want you to use one word, not hyphenated words, not phrases, one word. One word describing the biggest challenge you face when including digital literacy in an ESL classroom, whether it's yours or one of your teachers, if you're an administrator or just at your program. So I'm going to go to the next poll, and I'm going to go ahead and present this. And it's the same thing. You can text your response to 222-333, or you can use the website, pollev.com/Dr. Glenda Rose 536. Time, access, expertise, communication, instructions, because it takes a long time to get those instructions clear enough for our English language learners for them to do what we want them to do on those devices, right? Absolutely. Multi-levels. And multi-level doesn't just have to do with English, it also has to do with digital skills. So we've got multi-layers of multi-level. Absolutely. Contextualizing our instruction. We talk a lot about that, I think. Consistency, language, of course. Time seems to be the big hitter. So in these word clouds, the words that are bigger are usually the ones that have the most responses. So those are the examples on Poll Everywhere. That's how I would use it. And it would be an EdTech routine. It's something that comes up over and over in my classroom. We do other kinds. We do some of the polls that you can only do on the computer. Like there's a ranking, put these in order, in rank order. Most important to least important, or most expensive to least expensive. Those can only be done on the computer. There's some click on an image ones. There's all kinds of them. One of the things that I do like them is I create one poll for multiple classes. And when I'm done with it, I can actually clear responses and it saves it to a spreadsheet for me. So I don't actually lose my students' responses. I just have them in a spreadsheet and then I can reuse the poll, which is very nice. But I do agree with you guys. Time and access are probably two of the biggest things that we have to overcome in adult education, especially for using devices in English language classes. All right, so let's go over here. So before we talk any strategies, I do want to talk a little bit about emotions, because some of you said overcoming fear, you said anxiety, you talked about adventurous mindset, and that is so true. So just really quickly, if you already speak Russian or Ukrainian, this isn't going to be a whole lot of strange for you, but for the rest of us, if I told you that we're going to go to the computer lab, here's your keyboard, and I want you to write the word student, which in Ukrainian is student, it's a cognate, it's very easy, sounds exactly the same. Write down, if you will, if you have a piece of paper, what you think that would look like. Because here's your keyboard, I'm sitting you down in the computer lab, and this is what you have to work with. Funding. Thank you, Rachel. Funding is always an issue. Yeah, so this can be a little frustrating. So here we have the answer here. The C is always the S sound. T, this letter up here is Y. This letter in the bottom right next to this X, that's the U. So this Y is a U, and this symbol that looks like a sideways person is U. There's D, E, the H is the N sound, and the T is the T. So even if it looks somewhat similar to their native language, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen from my teachers trying to integrate digital literacy is just putting them in front of a keyboard. And they may come from a no literacy background. They don't know sound to symbol relationships. They may come from a non-Roman alphabet. They may come from a Roman alphabet like French or German, where the keys are in different places on the keyboard. My phone occasionally switches automatically, and it drives me crazy because the keys are not where they're supposed to be. So when I'm touch typing, it's not the right key. So that's something to keep in mind. We have to go with our beginning level, especially ESL students. We want to make sure they're comfortable with our alphabet before we start expecting them to sit down at a keyboard in English and actually start working on a project on a computer. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So right now, I want you to take out a piece of paper. We're going to do a pop quiz. You're going to put your answers in the chat. Once I say waterfall. Question 1, what are the 5 components of digital literacy? You've got 10 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Waterfall. Look, I had 1 participant. Okay. So the point of this, you guys are just being such good sports. So the point of this is that nobody, panic attack, exactly, Haley, that these kinds of situations where we're expected to remember something that we just learned and haven't had a chance to put into our long-term memory is very stressful. And we know, according to English language learning theory, that our English language adults will run away. Kids have to stick, they have to stay in school. But our adults, if they get too stressed, too overwhelmed by what we're asking them to do, they'll just leave. You panicked also. Okay. So I apologize for that. It wasn't intentionally trying to make you panic, to recognize what happens when we have this, what's called affective filter. So the affective filter is something that was developed, it's a theory by Stephen Krashen. And basically it says if your motivation is low and your self-confidence low and your anxiety is high, there's going to be this filter in your brain that's going to keep input from getting to you, to your long-term learning. And so if you can reduce the anxiety, increase motivation and self-confidence, that filter gets smaller, you get more input, so there's more opportunity for learning. And what we want to do with digital literacy, the same as with language literacy, is when we're introducing digital skills, we want to keep that filter as small as possible so that we have more opportunity for learning. If you didn't know, learning English is stressful. For a lot of people, learning digital skills is stressful. When you put learning English and digital skills together, it's very stressful. So we have to intentionally create a classroom climate that is emotionally safe for our students. That is the goal. On the other hand, there is a little bit of stress that's a good thing. So if you have a butterfly and it's coming out of its cocoon and you cut it open, it will never fly because the water gets pressed out of their wings as they're struggling. And if they don't have that struggle, their wings are too heavy and they're not able to fly. So we want our students to have just enough stress to keep moving forward, but not so much that they run away from our classes. So when you're thinking about your digital literacy classes, or you're including digital literacy elements into your classes, and you see that garage door effect come down with the affective filter, then you probably need to do something to decompress, make it less stressful, maybe revisit what we're doing in the digital literacy aspect and come back to it later in a different way. Okay, so let's look at some basic strategies. We've gotten the emotions out of the way. We've got the concepts of digital literacy and we haven't talked about digital resilience yet, but let's talk about some strategies to actually include these into our classrooms, because that's really what you want. The first one is, I don't think it's a good idea to teach digital literacy skills separate from our ESL class, because most of our adult learners are coming to our English class to learn English. If I say I'm also going to teach digital skills, about half of them will be okay with it. About 25% of them will say, I didn't sign up for that. And the other 25% will be really excited, right? So what we want to do, though, is digital literacy is like at the gas station. It is naturally occurring in the lives of our adult students. And we want to integrate the inclusion of digital literacy where it most likely fits in our curriculum for our adult learners. So, for example, if you can think about a typical ESL textbook, where in the introductions unit might you see digital literacy? Where do we use digital literacy when we are introducing ourselves? I'm waiting for you to write in chat. Zoom hasn't quite caught up with the little bubbles, so let me know you're typing. Phone, yes, word cloud, enrollment registration forms everywhere, emailing teachers, all of them. So email is one, definitely. I don't ever copy anybody's phone numbers anymore. I have them send me a text and then I save their contact information. Is that horrible? Or I use a virtual business card where they just tap my phone and I get it. So there's digital literacy in the introductions unit that we can talk about. One of the things I've done with the introductions unit is have them create business cards for each other, not their own business cards. And I've also, for my more advanced students, I've had them do, like if they were putting a personal ad on a romantic website, dating website. But now let's think about more specifically, where does digital literacy show up in our food and shopping units? Where does digital literacy occur when we're talking about food and shopping in our daily lives? How to make payments, self-checkout, cashiers, digital coupons, store apps, discounts. Yeah, those wonderful loyalty plans that are checking out everything you buy and making sure you understand what's going on when you sign up for those. Venmo, thank you, Melissa, or PayPal, or whatever you're using for different kinds of paying, or Google Pay or Samsung Pay or whatever you're using. Obviously, I'm not an Apple person because Apple Pay didn't come into my head until like all the others went through. Ordering food online. Yeah, different ways to order food online. You can order on the app, you can call in. So it's just, it naturally occurs there. What about your health unit? Where do we see digital literacy in our daily lives when it comes to our health? My chart, your patient portals, my health, tracking movement, teledocs, getting doctor records. Yeah, making an appointment. And doing all that paperwork before you can go, right? They make you do all of that pre-work now. They rarely let you do it on paper. They make you do it online or on a tablet when you get there. Yeah, Kevin, filling out an intake on a tablet, vaccine records, test results. So these are naturally occurring. Let's skip down to jobs for time's sake. Where do we see digital literacy naturally occurring when we're talking about jobs? Apps, job ads, interviewing, because a lot of them are on Zoom or other video conferencing software, job searches, looking for openings everywhere, most aspects of work, websites, resumes, right? Exactly, it's everywhere. So now I want you to think as an ESL teacher for a minute. If I can just step back and ask myself, where is digital literacy going to naturally occur? I can design activities in my lesson to include those skills and that vocabulary in my lesson without having a separate digital skills class. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions or comments about that? LinkedIn, yes. Okay. So I'm not asking teachers, I'm not asking my teachers as a program director, I'm not asking them to find another 30 minutes in their day where they can teach digital skills. I'm asking them to include the digital skills that our students need when they go out and they're doing life as adults in the United States. So that's my first basic solution. Integrate, don't separate. Teach it as something integrated to your lesson. My second biggest strategy is always do it on paper first. So if I'm teaching, for example, how to fill out a job application online, I'm going to print screen that job application that I'm using as an example, and we're going to fill it out on paper first. I do everything on paper first. It just saves me a lot of time. This originally came up as a strategy because I was teaching a class that met for 6 hours a day, 4 days a week, but I only had a computer lab access 1 hour a day. And if I did not do everything on paper first, I spent my whole 1 hour just trying to get people logged on, just trying to get them in the right sites, and just running from person to person, trying to get everything taken care of. So I found it was a really good teaching strategy. Let's do it on paper first, and then transfer that skill to the digital world. That's just a solution that you can try, and I'm going to show you an example of that in the DART curriculum. The next thing is we always talk about scaffolding in education, and adult education in particular. I stopped asking my students on my intake survey if they have a phone because I haven't had anybody say no, a cell phone, in so long. But then I began to realize, and this is, by the way, not just my ESL students, but also my adult basic education students, they don't really know their phones that well. So some of the things that we talk about is on their phone, do they know how to get to their email? Do they know what their email address is? A lot of times my students have had their children set up their phones, and their children created an email for them, but they don't even know what it is. They also set up the App Store, and they don't know the password for the App Store. So if I ask them to download an app, sometimes they can't do it. And then how to do a Google search. And the big thing that I found when I asked them to download an app or go to a website is they're not able to understand that our phones are basically computers, and they have a limited amount of memory. So if you took 20 pictures of the same pose at your cousin's wedding 15 years ago, every one of those pictures is taking up space on your phone. And if you never clean out those pictures, eventually your phone's going to slow down, or it's just going to stop working. And so we talk about the word curate. You need to curate your photos, go through, get rid of the ones that you don't really want, save the ones that are really important to some sort of cloud software, cloud storage, so that if something happens to your phone, they're not just gone. Most of them do that automatically now, but get them off of the memory card of your computer, of your cell phone, so that you can free up space. Need to clear the cache. That's a great English lesson right there. How to clear your cache. It's a big problem. It's a big problem for a lot of people. How to check what's using memory. My mom was in the hospital one time, and her phone was not charging, and we couldn't figure it out. And she was on my data plan, and she used like 20 gigs overnight at the hospital. And it finally figured out that somebody was basically hacking her phone to do crypto mining. And so it was just using all my data on her phone. I thought she was sharing videos with everybody in the hospital. I had no idea how she used so much data so fast. It was pretty funny with me saying, who did you share your videos with? So just helping them to understand what's going on their phone, if it's not charging, if it's not acting right, what to do, some of the basic things you can do to kind of fix those things. So start with their phones. There's lots of like scavenger hunt things you can do on your phone. Do they know how to turn Bluetooth on and off? Do they know how to connect to different Wi-Fis and when not to connect to different Wi-Fis? Do they know how to use airplane mode so that if the national alerts go through, it's not going to interrupt your testing? Those kinds of things are really, airplane mode is one of the first things I teach my students for testing, because if you don't put your phone on airplane mode and there's an amber alert or a silver alert, it's still going to go through. So that's one of the important things that I teach them, even if they're not going to travel on an airplane. Google Translate, that's a great one, Cheryl. So there's lots of things they can do on their phones that they don't even realize that they can do. So I'm going to give you an example from the DART curriculum. This is, again, written for very low ESL. I'm going to show you where to find it. If we go to the TCall website, so that's, I'm going to put it in the chat here. It's tcall.tamu, tcall.tamu, Texas A&M University.edu. That's our state professional development organization, the Texas Center for the Advancement of Literacy and Learning. So TCall has very graciously put the DART curriculum on their website and made it available to everybody. So this is available to anybody who wants to use it. Right now, it's on their pop-up. You can see it right here on the front, digital literacy. But if you close that, if it goes away from there, what you'll do is you'll go to the institutes, to the Distance Learning and Technology Institute, and it'll be in this section right here, by Dr. Glenda Rose and Dr. Denise Guckert. Denise was a really big help with me. We started this as a project for Tyson because they had these tablets that nobody was using. And of course, when a corporation invests in technology like that, they want people to use it. When I talked to the teachers, and I think Dawn is in here, Dawn was one of them I was talking to. When I was talking to the teachers, one of the biggest reasons they weren't using the technology is because it took them so long to log in. And by the time they got the students logged in, they've ate up half of their instructional time. And so they just simply gave up on it. So we came up with an initial curriculum for helping them get these students into their computers, into their devices more quickly, and including into their ESL class. So if you notice on the left side here, you can download the lessons one by one. So it starts off with just a basic alphabet lesson, and then alphabet on the keyboard, and then alphabet uppercase and alphabet uppercase on the keyboard, and then the number and special keys on the keyboard and the symbols on the keyboard. There was a lot of discussion about what symbols to include in a beginning ESL class. It was a lot of fun. And then we have a basic introduction to security, because what we found was some of our students were coming from places where the concept of security wasn't in place. They didn't have doors, or they didn't live in places that were in refugee camps. There was no sense of locking things up. So we had to teach that before we did strong and weak passwords. Some of the lessons have PowerPoint, some of them have YouTube videos, most of them have handouts, and I'm going to show you what the handouts for a keyboard. Let's look at the symbols lesson. Let me go to that. Here we go. So here's the symbols. It's in a PDF and an editable, because the idea when we were writing this was not that this is the way to do it. It was to give teachers an idea of how to integrate it without creating a separate curriculum. So these are my ideas about how I would teach it, but I know that teachers all have their different styles and different ways of doing things. So we also provided it in a Word document so you could look at it that way. So there you see the PowerPoint notes. There's a bingo card if you want to use them. And then there's our keyboard. So I do want to show you what the keyboard looks like. Oh, this is the assessment. Hold on. So what we did with the keyboard, we actually had somebody who created the keyboards for us. And when we started with the alphabet, for example, the only thing that they saw were the alphabet. Everything else was grayed out. And as we learned the numbers became white, and then all the special keys became white, and then the symbols became white. So those are the handouts available for this class. There's that. You can download the whole curriculum. It's got a lot of good tips and tricks in it too, but let's look at the actual lesson here. Maybe a little too big, a little too close. All right, so in our lessons, we're going to have our overview and our objectives, your materials, any online resources you might want to use. Now, these were added because when we were piloting, they were mostly multi-level. So we were trying to avoid using a lot of technology until like lesson 10. But when we were piloting them, there were some other resources that came into play. So, and they found that it was not difficult for the students to use them. So that's why they're in there. And then there's keyboarding practice. And some of the content standards that we went are here that we used. The key vocabulary, in case you want to teach that in advance. And then we're using a 5E lesson plan. So engagement, here's what we're going to do. Let's explore it a little bit. And then I'm going to explain what we're doing. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to practice through elaboration. And then I'm going to evaluate it. And there's some ideas about differentiation here. There's that word wall for the differentiation. So all the lesson plans are laid out like that, and they're very step-by-step. The goal was to write it as if it were for someone who never had taught ESL at all. That's why it will say, now it's your turn to try, because we're trying to model for new teachers the kind of language you need to use at that very low level. So what do you think, guys? These lessons look like something. There's flashcards. There's all kinds of stuff available for the teacher to use. But if you look at the language, it's going to integrate with what you're teaching in the classroom. So there's clarification questions, there's asking for help. So it has language objectives as well as digital literacy objectives. These are our specialties flashcards. So it just depends, Dawn, how long is it going to take? Every class is different. Depends not only on their English level, but their digital literacy level. If you're integrating it, it may just be 10 or 15 minutes, like the alphabet. I have one teacher in my program who was using this as her ESL curriculum. They were having a blast, by the way. I peeked in, they were laughing, they were having a good time. I was so happy to see them using it like that. But you may have to take a lesson and break it over several class meetings. And maybe sometimes it only takes 1 or 2 tries because they already know all that. Let's see, there were some other questions in here. Yeah, okay, so on the keyboards, Ingrid, I was going to show you guys one of my favorite tools when I'm teaching, whether I'm teaching online or in class, is, let's see if I can find it, Windows tab, is this little document camera right here. This is like an $88 document camera. I try to get my teachers, all of them have one that want one, because then I can show you, if you're in my classroom or online, I can show you what I'm doing on my keyboard. So whether you're using a Chromebook or you're using the keyboard on your phone or whatever, these little document cameras are very helpful for helping to teach those digital literacy skills. I will tell you also, this one is actually a Bluetooth portable one. My students would buy portable Bluetooth keyboards from Five and Below, which is just like a, current dollar store, because everything's at least $5 now, right? So it was like Five and Below. They would buy the Bluetooth keyboards, and then we would practice keyboarding on Google Docs and using their Google Classroom, Google Drive, that kind of thing. But they were still practicing their keyboarding skills because we were using an external keyboard, which is kind of cool. Nicole, I'm glad. I hope you get to look through them again. Do the keyboards evolve? Absolutely. They start with just the alphabet, and then we add things as they go along. Integrated with North Star. So now one of the ideas for this particular curriculum was to get them to the point where they could use North Star. So this is like a pre-North Star curriculum. They need the basic digital skills before they can even get to that point. Typetastic. Oh yeah, typing.com, Typetastic, any of those typing exercises are good. I use typing.com myself. There are assessments. I do not have certificates, but that's an interesting thing. We could create a suggested certificate and put that at the end of each unit. Let me close my document camera here. So this is just the lesson 2, which is where we're starting to introduce the alphabet on the keyboard. So here you see how they're grayed out, the keys that we don't know. It's more simplified. It gets more complicated and less it's grayed out as they continue along. The flashcards we're using are from eslflashcards.com, which is a free website. They'll let you download all kinds of flashcards in different sizes and different ways. And so I use those a lot for playing games like Go Fish type games with the students, because they all have their own deck of cards. So that's, I'm going to put that in the webs here. Let me give you that. If you came for nothing else, that is a great resource if you're an ESL teacher. eslflashcards.com. See if I can find it real quick. Well, if you spell right, flashcards. There it is. Wait, let me put that in the link so you can share that with anybody. So you can actually, if I wanted to do these action flashcards, he does use a lot of ads, but they're free, so that's why they have a lot of ads. Then you can actually download them, and you can choose the size, small, medium, or large, and you can choose if you want a checklist, images with labels, words only, or words with the IPA pronunciation. So you can mix and match, like if you want to do memory, or you want to do match the picture with the word, or it's just a very cool different thing, and they're free. So that's just a free resource that I think is very helpful. And he very graciously allowed us to use his flashcards in our curriculum. And then evaluate. They can use the paper keyboards, or you can use a practice keyboard like a little Bluetooth one or a USB one. I used to, because I only had one computer in my classroom, I would take my USB keyboard and pass it around the classroom to practice before we went to the lab. So everybody had an opportunity not only to practice on the keyboard, but they would help each other. So they were giving each other instructions in English on what to do. And so that was very helpful. All right. Any questions, comments about the DART curriculum before I do the last little section here on resilience? I hope you'll take some time to look at it, because it really is second the request for a certificate. Okay. I will work on that. For and I might have to get a hold of Anson Green for this, but Anson had actually come up with type 4 MSG, basically the skills progression checklist. He actually came up with an Excel sheet where you could use this curriculum for type MSG type 4, not the 5, not the skills progression, the 4. What's the 4, guys? With the benchmarks usually placed by the employer. I just forgotten the actual verbiage, but he's actually got a spreadsheet that you can use for that. And then I could definitely see giving them a certificate if those were the skills needed for the job. It is a measurable skills gain. It's a measurable skills gain type 4, though, and I can't remember the name for it. Just driving me nuts. Okay. All right, so let's talk about digital resilience. Milestones. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. The Milestones MSG. I appreciate it. That can be set up usually by an employer to say these are the skills they need. So if they need digital skills for their employment, he actually did that for Tyson, came up with a spreadsheet that shows how the DART curriculum could be used for milestones. Okay, let's talk about digital resilience. So this you're seeing right now, I hope on the screen, is my first computer. This is a TRS-80. I had it in about 1977, 1978. My neighbor got a new color computer, and so he gave us this one. And so I got to learn how to use BASIC, because you had to program everything before you could do anything on it. I didn't have a monitor like this one has a Radio Shack monitor. I didn't have a monitor. I just plugged it into the TV. And then you saved everything on a cassette tape. And it was a metal cassette tape that squealed when you did it. And then in the 80s, I had these Microsoft DOS computers. You guys remember these? Some of you might, where you had to load the operating system before you could do anything else on the computer. And you pretty much everything was almost like coding when you went into the Microsoft Office, when you went into Microsoft DOS. And you saved everything on those 5 1/4-inch discs. And if you left those in your car in the summer in Virginia, like I did, you lost all of your work ever because they just melted. Yes, good times. And then in the 90s, I finally got down to a laptop. This was an IBM ThinkPad. It was probably 4 inches thick and weighed 30 pounds. But this was the first computer I ever took to an ESL class. And I would use it to teach colors and numbers and alphabet. And I would just use a little thing like that. Oh, wow. That's kind of scary. Okay, so, and then I got my cell phone, my smartphone in the 2000s. And then I finally got around to a tablet, probably in the 2010s. So what does all this have to do with digital resilience? I call myself a generation 1.5 digital resident. I'm not a native. I didn't grow up with it. It got introduced in my house when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. But because I was so young, I was able to grow with it. And I had to change with every iteration. And it's been changing very fast. So it's not enough to teach our students a program. We need to teach them basically transferable skills, computational thinking, critical thinking, graphic reasoning. And those are all things you can do without having a computer in the classroom. You can do that on paper first. So digital resilience definition from our World EdTech Center, which is a great website and resource if you haven't been there. This is the definition: the awareness, skills, agility, and confidence. So we said for digital literacy, it was find, evaluate, organize, create, and communicate. For digital resilience, we say awareness, skills, agility, and competence to be empowered users of new technologies and adapt to changing digital skill demands. So that means I don't want to just give you, I'm going to give you the worst class I ever taught. I taught an ESL Microsoft Office certification class, and we were using a program that said, you know, click here, do this, click that, do the other thing. And the first time that my students took the certification test, nobody passed. And I realized it was because they were following the instructions. They could do the task, but if you asked them to do a similar task, they didn't know what to do. Right? So I realized that digital resilience means I don't need to teach you just what to do. I need to teach you why you're doing it and how that might look different on a similar program with a different user interface. So when you're thinking about digital resilience, I don't think, I've had teachers who say we all need to have the same device. I don't necessarily think we all need the same device. We need to know how to find the same tools and activities on the device that we have, especially if the students are bringing their own devices to class. There is a initiative right now, Digital Resilience in the American Workforce. They're doing state cohorts. We'll have some more in January that has some really good resources. So I don't know if I can, here's the information. They did a landscape scan of what's going on in the digital resilience in adult education. And they've got some great resources if you guys want to look into them. Links has also put up some of their content so that you guys can look at that. There's the landscape scan. Deep dives and workbooks are really good. Tools to look at some of the things you can do. And this is just the application for the cohorts that are going through by the state. But that is working with teachers to think about these EdTech routines and developing EdTech routines and intentionally including digital literacy in our class. And I think that's the big takeaway. It's out there. Digital literacy is out there for our adult learners. And so whether it's ABE or ESL, as a teacher, I just need to be intentional about including those digital skills without having to have a separate digital literacy class. It's okay to have one if that's what students want. But even if they're not wanting a digital literacy class, they're wanting ESL or GED. Thank you very much for putting that in, Estella. It's still very important that we include those digital skills so our students are able to take advantage of everything that this country offers. There's two other skills. The EdTech Integration Strategy Toolkit is a kind of fun tool. It's set up as it's a Glide app, which Glide is just basically, it takes a spreadsheet and turns it into an app. And you can go into the menu. It's designed for a phone, so it doesn't look quite right on the computer. But you can actually go in here and look for a skill that you want your students to know, like email basics, and it'll give you resources for that for your classroom. And it'll give you sometimes EdTech routines to use with your classes to develop those skills. So I think that's an extremely helpful website to use. Let me copy that. The Glide app, that's one that I think is very useful. Thank you, Laura. The Digital Skills Library is another really good one. They're related. They're intertwined. But as part of the Digital Skills Library, one of the things that I have started using is the glossary. It has an instructor guide, but basically this is a series of slide decks with the common vocabulary, and it's created by teachers. So Jeff Gumas and Rachel Riggs and them, they got together, they got teachers to volunteer their time to create these slides that you can use in your classroom for digital literacy. So if I wanted to look at email and messaging, it's not clicking for me. Well, let's see if I can find it. Oh, maybe I had to put it in slideshow mode. Email and messaging. Yeah, there we go. Then I have all the terms that it's going to teach me, and it'll have a definition. It'll have a use it in the sentence. It'll let you listen to it, learn how to pronounce it. So for my ESL, and who the teacher who created or the educator who created it will be there. Add that URL. Okay, so it is on the one that, oops, sorry. It is on the one that Laura posted, but it's a link at the top. So if you go to the, let me grab this one, the glossary, go to the library and then just put /glossary. You can print them out, you can play with them on papers. Like I said, you don't always have to be in a computer lab, you can do other things on paper first. So I think that's a great resource for you guys too. All right, we are at the end of our hour. So let me just, is the glad I link correct? It seems to be missing something. Well, maybe, let me try again. Nope, looks like it's correct. I clicked on the one in the chat and it opened up. What you're gonna wanna do is click on the show full screen down here, and that will actually open the app. Okay? Patricia, let me know if that worked for you. So I'm just going to go over my goals and give me a thumbs up if it was okay for you. So let me see. Everybody okay with the definition of digital literacy at this point? All right. See lots of thumbs up on that. We have some solutions for some of those common challenges. Thumbs ups, hearts, something, let me know. Okay. Everybody know where to find the dark curriculum if you want to look at it later? Excellent. And we understand this concept of digital resilience and why we have to include that, not just the literacy, right? I believe so. Bethel, it says, will a recording of this webinar be available later? Yeah, let me get that again for you, Patricia. It worked on mine, so I'm not sure what that is. So let me see. Try this. See if that takes you there. That's coming straight from the address bar. Okay, well, that is it. Bethel says, yes, the recording will be available later. I appreciate you all participating and being here. I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope to see you again soon.